We're going to take a closer look at the situation now with Dr. Sajjan Gohel, who is the International Security Director at the Asia Pacific Foundation. Dr. Gohel, thank you very much for joining us today. So there have already been 3 wars in Kashmir alongside multiple insurgencies and decades of general political unrest. How does what we're seeing now compare to some of the past flare-ups?
Well, certainly it's very tense. The situation is precarious. You have to keep in mind that the attack that took place in Kashmir ended up being recorded by passers-by. You saw the men being executed by the terrorists. A young boy saw his father being shot. A couple on their honeymoon, the woman saw her husband being killed. These videos have gone viral. So the situation is very emotional, emotive, and angry, and there's a lot of expectation in India for the government to react. We've already seen that India has taken the unprecedented step of suspending its participation in the Indus Water Treaty. That's also led to Pakistan reacting and threatening further action. So we are seeing the situation spiral, and it doesn't look like that there's any particular off-ramp at this moment.
Now, India has presented very little evidence, at least publicly, of Pakistan's involvement. So how justified do you think the Modi government is in blaming Islamabad? And what do you think that India's ultimate objective is?
I don't think it's been a secret for the last 2 decades that the cross-border terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir has ultimately stemmed from Pakistan, whether it is French or British or American practitioners. Everyone's been aware that Pakistan has been involved, unfortunately, in that statecraft, particularly its intelligence agency, the ISI, that's had a very notorious reputation. You may recall the 2008 Mumbai siege attacks in which over 155 people were killed. That was tied to a terrorist group called the Lashkar-e-Toiba, which has these very murky ties with Pakistan's military apparatus. And it's interesting that in this attack, an offshoot of the LET, the resistance front, claimed responsibility for it. And this tends to be the problem, is that Pakistan provides sanctuary and support for these groups that then operate with impunity. And there's very little done within Pakistan to clamp down on them. And that leads to where we are at today.
Now, you mentioned Lashkar-e-Toiba there. I mean, like you say, an offshoot took responsibility for this attack, though in my understanding, there seems to be quite a bit of skepticism, if not confusion, about whether or not that's true. What do we know about that group's activities in or positions on Kashmir?
Well, keep in mind that the Lashkar-e-Toiba was created as an entity to try and wrest control from India for Jammu and Kashmir. And the group itself, its leadership, still operates inside Pakistan. It's faced heavy sanctions by the international community. It's prescribed by France, by Britain, by America, and many other countries. But its leadership still issues very fiery statements. Because they've been so heavily sanctioned, in many ways they've had to create alternative elements within its apparatus, that henceforth the resistance front, which is a very murky entity. But they seem to operate in the same way that the Lashkar-e-Toiba does. If you look at the attack that it carried out, it was execution style. They had military-grade equipment. The whole modus operandi very much features as part of an LET type of attack.
To what extent, sir, do you think that Narendra Modi could be interested in using this attack as a way to respond to domestic pressure on his government, either to root out Muslim extremism, or simply to show that the security situation is under control in India?
Interesting point. Prior to this attack, India actually had not really shown all that much interest in engaging with Pakistan. The tensions had already been there. There was already a precarious balanced relationship, which wasn't moving forward. There was a diplomatic standoff for the last few years. So India had largely ignored Pakistan. This, unfortunately, has now brought that tension back into the focus. I know there are some that are making speculation about the domestic aspect, but I think India is very much, it seems, for now focused on the international aspect. It's interesting that the Indian Ministry of External Affairs held a meeting in which invited ambassadors from all over the world, from the Arab world, from Western countries, including France, in which it wanted to make its case internationally that it wanted to deal with terrorism globally and expected support from those countries.
Now, speaking of, speaking to other countries, with numerous major crises on the world stage right now, obviously the wars in Gaza and Ukraine, the trade war as well, who, if anyone, is best positioned to mediate between India and Pakistan now to avoid the worst?
So it's interesting that this attack occurred when U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance was in India to negotiate a trade deal. The U.S. has come out pretty strongly in condemning this as an act of terrorism, as have a lot of other countries like the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, the U.K. and France. I don't think there is going to be any country that's going to try and, at the moment, get involved between India and Pakistan. People are watching to see how this potentially plays out. I think there is an expectation that India may try and carry out a sort of a precision type military operation against potential terrorist camps in Pakistan. That's what we've seen in the past. Keep in mind what happened in 2016 as well as in 2019. So you could try and use those examples as a template. And even back then, there was very little intervention from the international community. And I dare say that the international community right now is watching carefully, but they're not seeking to get involved too heavily.
Dr. Sajjan Gohel, that's unfortunately all we have time for. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.